Hey, what's up everybody? Hope you're doing great. I got the buddy Jordan here again, and I wanted to actually go through some Kakie work because it's something that I feel is often misrepresented and often misunderstood. There's no one way to do it, but there are ways that you can kind of increase the benefits that you get from it. So today I just kind of wanted to go over a couple basic kind of like framework pushing ways that you can use Kakie and practice Kakie, and then take that from just the pushing and receiving framework and take it more into like live application and live drills. So that is what we're going to cover. Okay, so first things first, Kakie is the Okinawan iteration of push hands or listening hands, sticky hands, things like this. It's not unique to karate, it's not unique to Okinawa. But with that said, each individual ryuha or school will probably practice things a little bit differently in ways that are a little bit more tailored towards their overall approach. Where you typically start out is just a basic cross hands kind of position here. And there's a little bit of a misnomer going on here that has some interesting history behind it, but people often within at least the English language will say push hands. And so the misnomer is that people think that there needs to be a bunch of force all the time, constantly pushing. Now, the first rule that a lot of people are going to learn in something like Tui Shou in Tai Chi or Tai Chi Chuan, or sticky hands, Chi Sau within Wing Chun, or any other variation of listening hands, push hands, this kind of stuff, one of the first lessons you're going to learn is that those who try to use force will never develop the skills that push hands can offer you. And what that's not saying that there's never force and push, it's just pointing out that it's not the constant state, as in this. Jordan feeds me push. If I am physically resisting right now, I'm using push at the wrong time. That's the concept here. If he's giving me push, he's giving me goal, right? If we're talking about Goju terms, he's giving me goal. So I'm not fighting goal with goal. I'm using softness to overcome. I don't want to sit there and push and physically resist as he's pushing, because then all we're doing is staying in a constant state of tension and pushing. Now, adding pressure is good, but it needs to be decided upon between two partners as they're going. It shouldn't be the default. When you're getting warmed up, eliminate tension. That's what you want to eliminate, because it's not a competition. It's a mutually beneficial training exercise that teaches how to understand or teaches your body to feel where energy is coming from and how to stay connected without having to look, without being dependent on sight, because the eyes can deceive you or whatever. Without being dependent on sight, you just learn how to feel. So if Jordan, for instance, gives me pressure that direction, do I fight it and go, no? No, he gives me pressure that direction, I just follow through. I let my arm give to his force and I come through. Take it that direction. So in this case, it's kind of hard for him to take it to this direction in any kind of way that makes sense. Typically, if someone is giving energy this way, it's actually releasing energy. So if we're connected and you take your hand off that way, I just need to follow through. My hand, it feels that there's an emptiness. Same thing if I were to intentionally free it. If he frees it of his own volition, I just follow through because I feel that there's that emptiness there. Same thing with downwards, forward. I kind of touched base on this, but do I fight force with force? No. I give to it and I receive. That's the more efficient use of energy, and that's the skill that you actually develop through push hands. When you start wanting to put power in there, like I was saying, decide upon that with your partner. Don't let it be the constant state. But there's also things like kakedamishi, which are perfect for adding a little bit of pressure. Also, you can just take these things to a basic ippon kind of drill. So, it can turn into some conditioning, but again, this is not conditioning. Conditioning is a separate thing. You can use it for that, and people might want to of their own accord, but if you use it as conditioning and you keep your body under constant tension, you're not actually developing those skills. Your body is going to but your nervous system is going to learn these things and ingrain them in your body better if you are relaxed rather than being super tense the whole time. All right, so let's get back to kind of the starting position, the basic cross hands position, right? So inside of hand or backside of hand, depending on how people like to practice. This is basically your chewed-on block right here with an open hand, right? The offhand can be doing all sorts of stuff, can be prepped, catching, whatever. This right here, it's not a super common place to really be in any kind of physical altercation. It's really just a snapshot in time of when this is established. So for instance, if Jordan lead jab or something like that, I'm just over here. So this is how we're getting there essentially. And this isn't something that you're gonna find, you're just not gonna find yourself in this position a ton unless you do a ton of sidestepping and get really comfortable with it, which I would recommend. But from here, this is an intentional place to get to. So there's a lot of people that will do some practice with this, where they're pushing, and they start on the outside gate with the non-adjacent arm, and they pass off to the middle, which, look, if we're thinking about this in actual real application, what would that look like? It'd be Jordan throwing that punch, me getting to the outside gate, and then going, nope, I'm gonna get back to the inside gate. It's not really efficient use of your body and your energy. If he's throwing that lead punch, and I want to ultimately get to here, well, throw that punch again, I should just get to there in the first place and go. I don't need to start playing patty cake with people. I just need to go in and hit what I want to hit. Now, where this actually does kind of come into play is really your close range post contact work. So for instance, Jordan like traps up this arm in some way, like I'm compromised and he's like trying to throw another punch or something, or even, here, yeah, let's use that one. So you like trap me up in some way and I'm kind of compromised. Well, I just go back to those mechanics of Kakie. In this kind of situation, I could just keep on going to the outside, that's fine. If I'm pinned and trapped up here, I can just go to the outside. But in the event that I want to come into the inside here, it makes a lot more sense. It makes more sense once it's post-contact rather than in anticipation of a live strike. Okay, so let's actually look at the framework that this is used in. So the most basic thing that you're going to see if you start practicing Kakie, the number one thing you're probably going to first learn is you start. So you're going to learn this breaking up kind of motion. I'll show that in a second here. And sinking, so more of a floating and a sinking, and it's just two different ways of disrupting structure. So Jordan's got a pin or trap on me like this, so I could push out and against. That's not really the goal here. What the practice here is I want to have some kind of rotation of the arm, breaking upward motion. My arm going like this just gets me closer to his elbow in general, which is good for me in terms of controlling his upper body. But the idea, when the push goes up, better posture, right? The push goes up, I'm using this to kind of break the pin or trap that I'm in, everything around here tightening up, and then so that's more of like a floating kind of motion. Now there's the sinking. So now from here, it's the sinking into the center and the core. Now if I were to put more body weight into this, I might be stepping into it as I sink. But the idea is we're playing with floating and sinking from a post-contact position. So again, this is your more standard, basic starting Kakie framework, pushing towards center mass here. Jordan doesn't want me to let this come down any further, so the catching hand is there for reference. And then if we start getting a little bit more live with it, like rock and step, you can keep this hand kind of tethering with where your other elbow goes. This is something that's very common in Goju-ryu that you see a lot. For instance, Kururunfa. So let's see here. We're connected or whatever in some way. I've got to this outside gate and like maybe you've like stopped this arm from doing something coming through. Not that you did just there, but you're like trying to prevent this arm from coming through and doing something, right? So I'm in this position now. Kururunfa, what are we doing? I want to target that elbow coming through here. So tracking the hand with your other elbow, gonna be wise here, even in basic Kakie. The next position that you're going to find is going to be straight back and forth. People might have different orders for explaining this, but I'm just going to straight back and forth right now. So the idea is, again, loosen up, be loose and relaxed, and I'm going to go straight in. You're going to come straight in, straight in, straight in, straight in, straight in. Now, I have a love-hate relationship with this. I don't really like this one all that much because I would much rather, for dealing with energy coming through, I would rather just do like an ippon drill, just some basic partner work. But there are some things here that I do like, so I'll talk about them. So one thing that you can do, you want to, in any event, you want to learn how to sense when there's an increase or change in energy, really. And so what we're doing is if we're pushing soft, pretty soft, then one of them, just at random, turn one into like a really hard push punch thing. So, and yeah, just keep on going, doing it random, go again. So the idea here is to feel when that changes, not be in that constant state of tension, but when I feel that there's a little bit more, well, that's when I want to start taking it offline. And where I think this actually kind of helps is there's a lot of situations where you might be connected in some kind of way and you want to strike from wherever you're at. You want to be able to strike, again, that's like a good idea to be able to strike from wherever you're at. I think anybody that's like a proficient fighter understands that when there's an opportunity to throw a punch, even if they're not doing anything, even if you're not doing anything else with your hands, if you have an opening, take it. So you will have openings from post-contact positions, and this is just like one aspect of Kakie that can kind of help with that. All right, the next one that we're gonna look at is gonna be more circular on a, kind of like a tabletop plane, as opposed to circular on any other plane, really. And this one is a little bit closer to what you would actually find in like Tai Chi, although there's almost kind of like a 1-2, 1-2 count within Goju-ryu's framework for it. So essentially what you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna connect, and at first I'm gonna push out and in this way. So Jordan's gonna feel this pressure give, but he wants to stay stuck. He's gonna connect and stick with it. So hooking out and coming in, pushing to the center. Now we're gonna take it this way to complete the circle. I have my pinpoint though. So I have one pinpoint here, and then it's gonna come this way, and I have a receive point. And then we're gonna go reverse. One, release some tension. Now, it's important to focus on releasing tension because a lot of people when they practice, so let's get a little bit more natural with it. So when a lot of people start getting comfortable with Kakie, or start thinking they're comfortable with Kakie, one thing that you're gonna notice is that people start hurting here. Their arms get blown out. And that's typically a sign that you're doing something wrong or using too much force. If your body is getting tired and telling you to stop doing something, it's probably because you're not doing it in the most efficient way. So that's just kind of highlighting the importance of releasing that tension. It'll help you out in your practice. You'll actually be able to do Kakie longer without getting tired. So let's go back to the circular bit here. So boom, 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 boom. Tai Chi are obviously going to see much more no start and stop points, more connection, and obviously the offhand gets into play a little bit as people work with it, and the goal is to feel empty. But in Goju-ryu, or how this relates to Goju-ryu and application within Goju-ryu, this motion here is almost kind of like shitoge a little bit for for the circular mechanics that we use. So if I have a punch coming in, I can start getting to the outside, and now because there's the pinning motion first, I can navigate and sink in and pin, and I target his core. I target his center of mass. I'm not pushing to any other area. I'm pushing straight center. So when this comes around, I'm here and I'm sinking and I'm pushing in this way. Now the opposite side, there's obviously the flip side to this. Instead of me being a little bit more abrasive and more assertive, I guess, with my energy projecting into him, I'm gonna let his energy come through and pass. So we're connected. Sorry, we're going here. Oh, we're not connected. It's a punch drill. So instead of me pushing in, what I'm going to do is usher it through and let's go slower so they can see it a little bit better. I'm gonna meet, and now I'm gonna use this motion here, but it's wise to use some high sabaki, yashi sabaki, a little bit of body work to make sure that he falls down this line and I get off of it. But the mechanics are going to be roughly the same. At least what makes it strong. So from here, when I'm, punch again real quick. When I'm out here, what is strong? My lats are tight. This little nugget up here is good and tight in the shoulder, and I'm just bone structure right here. I'm not using muscle force whatsoever. I'm just bone structure going through, and my body weight is propelling it. So the same things that make this drill in Kakie, in this like circular version of Kakie, strong, the same thing that makes this strong makes those blocks and application strong. So if we start dialing up pressure, so resist me when I push that way, it'll be easier for you. So I start pushing this way, you can feel it. You can feel that right now I'm open and loose, it's not very tight. So I'm using more muscle to get the job done. But if I use more structure to get the job done, let's go back to that, resist me. If I use more structure to get the job done, it's not that hard. It's really not that hard for me to get into a position I want to be in. Free up this hand, boom. So that's more of like that circular plane. I would say the biggest area for this one is just, it's connecting and hooking from the outside or passing and ushering something on through. Alrighty, so this next one could potentially be one of my favorites only because it reminds me a ton of Hyun Sao and Wing Chun. I really like Hyun Sao. It's like a rotating wrist technique. Really good for just working on just kind of like that mobility and flexibility in the wrist, but it also kind of covers all the different positions that the hand can be in and how it can hook and connect with an opponent in application. So this one is a little funky. I mean, it's not funky, but I haven't seen a ton of people do this. But instead of just up and down pushing, right? Or any of the other variations that we did, when I push, I'm going to push, hook, push in. Then Jordan is going to return the same thing. So the key point here is this connection of the wrists the whole time. So if you practice kakete, switch over. If you practice some kakete, it's a lot of these same push-pull mechanics in the wrist that you're playing with here. So again, pushing in here, pushing in here. And where this comes into play, much like with like Hyun Sao and Wing Chun, throw a punch in, it's getting used to these kind of movements. It's not just grabbing with the hands and fingers, it's really connecting with the head of like this snake here, the neck joint going on here. So this is what's propelling where things are going, this is where things are sticking. I'm not dependent on my ability to grab. I'm just, again, punch comes through, this kind of stuff, same thing. It's these connection points and riding from where I'm at, keeping those connection points. Now, Jordan doesn't have a ton of experience with this one, so we're gonna see how this goes. But there is a variation that I like because this circular one actually sets you up perfect for some really good like Mawashi Yuke drills. So if we're here and I circle, push, and I go in, and now Jordan comes to me, so hook. So when my hand is, let's pause, when my hand is right here, oh, perfect for Mawashi Yuke, is it not? And I have a hand to pass it off to. Now you could just turn this into basic Mawashi Yuke drills, secure the arm, come in higher. You could pass off, come in here. You can do all sorts of little variations there, and I would recommend exploring all those. But if you want to start getting into some fun, kind of complicated stuff with some steps, what you can do is this. Hook, push, Mawashi Yuke. Keep the connection. Now, I'm going to keep this. We're getting pretty loose here, like letting our hands drop quite a bit. Obviously, the more proficient that you get with it, you want to take the elbow and keep it good within your frame. But for the sake of showing this, I'll show you what's going on. So this hand is going to continue the Mawashi Yuke, hook around, and push into Jordan. But when he does, I'm going to step forward, and you're going to pass it off to this hand, and hook right. Now, it's going to you, Mawashi Yuke. Keep the connection, step forward and push, and I pass it back off to me. So this one takes a little bit of practice to get people comfortable with it. It's also not the most important thing in the world, but I promise it actually feels good when you get the Mawashi Yuke in there. It makes it feel pretty fun, and if you keep all that connection going, it's just a good opportunity to see where you might be letting your elbows drift out and try to keep it close in. And again, reminds me a lot of like the Hyun Sao and Wing Chun, so I'm gonna be a forever fan of that one. Okay, so let's look at some ways that you can start playing. There's a couple different ways that you can start playing with Kakie in terms of different applications, so let's look at them. So the basic one I kind of already touched base on a little bit. If we're pushing, one of the most basic ones that you can do that people do a lot is the receive and pass to the free arm and do whatever you gotta do from there. Again, you know, just for the sake of a little refresher here, if that's a live punch, and I get to the outside gate, I'm probably not going, I'm gonna go back over there actually, you know, like this is probably not the situation this is gonna work in. So when it comes to stuff like this, and also what I was gonna talk about next, seizing and trapping, it's really, really, really much more applicable from a clinch range, post kind of contact position where we're going at this kind of stuff, and I wanna, you know, whatever I need to kind of do to, you know, go from there. So I would say this is more clinch range stuff. When you get into seizing within Kakie, so seizing, you know, you could see things like, a really basic one would just be people coming over the arm over here into the elbow, however they want to sink into the elbow. Usually some kind of like stepping through and trapping here. You can go into your arm. There's a bunch of different types of things that you can get into. I'm not gonna cover those right now because you should explore these on your own. But just know that the basic premise of this, not really from a live striking position, more from a post-contact situation when you're already close range in that clinch. Okay, so the next one is probably what I like the most, and it's actually just incorporating some stepping into your work, sidestepping, advancing, even retreating. So, you know, the sidestepping, what I like about it is this. If I feel a little bit of extra force right now, I feed off of that. I push off of that. I maintain that connection, but I just get offline. I feed off of Jordan's structure to get into a little bit more favorable position. It's just flanking, basic positional fighting. I like the sidestepping. I like sidestepping within Kakie a lot. I think it's a really good framework to help people get used to that kind of motion in general, and also get comfortable looking for contact and wanting to use contact to your advantage rather than being like, oh, I gotta get away from it. Mm-hmm. So then there's, I'll talk about advancing last, but then there's retreating. So in this situation, again, probably not going to pass to the outside and then get back to this side for some kind of step. But what works out really well for a lot of people, however, it doesn't make a ton of sense, is something like this. I pass off and I step and I would like pull him into like a kick or a knee, or even set myself up to kind of launch off his body as I pull into him. Again, I just don't really think people are going to be passing to one gate, passing to the other. This situation's a little bit more applicable when you're already like touching and this kind of stuff. Going from there, that's where it's going to make a little bit more sense. So you could, I mean, just experiment with it. So if we're here, you know, I want to step back. Maybe I just want to step back and pull him through. Maybe that's what I want to feed off of. That's certainly an option you could play with. But then there's advancing, and this kind of plays into some of that freeing hand stuff that I was talking about with Kururunfa. But you know, from here, if I want to give him, if I want to start trying to overwhelm him, right? My goal is not to just push, 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 which, I mean, that kind of worked, but that's not really my goal in this situation, or at least from the Kakie framework. My goal is a little bit more, let's play with that freeing hand concept. So he goes to push, pin that arm. Now from here, I can start going in. I can strike, I can get my body in, whatever I got to do to start getting him off balance and into a less favorable position. Now, the next one, you see a lot of Kakie that ends up in like takedown work online and things like that, which Kakie is really just the framework. It's not, I wouldn't say that a bunch of throws and all these takedowns are really a part of it, but you can certainly incorporate them into the practice. The practice itself is really learning to sense changes in energies and maintain a connection. Anything else that comes after that is really just your own exploration. And this is typically when you want to start putting a little bit of like force and power into stuff. So I'm not going to actually throw Jordan right now, but I'll show how, you know, this is almost like a Kakie version of leading up to like uchikomi type stuff. So it's a little bit more like entering kind of practices. So in any event, I can free the arm and get to a position where, boom, I can grab something, I can navigate around the arm this way, I can come underneath, but I can use Kakie as a setup to start practicing some like actual throws from here. It's not limited, it's limited to your own imagination really. So starting from this framework, say I want to get under the arm. So I come and trap this arm under here, come underneath, paying keen attention to my actual footwork here, but I've passed off, I've come in, I've secured his hand, his arm, I can come underneath, and if I work on proper mechanics here, which I wasn't doing just there, but if I were working on proper mechanics, you can get into a lot of different types of throws. It doesn't have to be around the arm, it can be around the body, but it can be around the body. As long as you can get your hand there and you can do it reliably without forcing it, you know, it's a good starting framework for some of these kind of throws and takedowns. Again, I don't necessarily think it's like the most appropriate place, but it is kind of fun. So, and if you actually have mats on the ground that you can just do some like basic throws and sweeps, great. You know, you could even go into like foot sweeps. I know you can't really see our feet right now, but let's scoot a tiny bit this way. But you know, I could pass this off, grab, uproot him or pin his elbow down, push up, start working on leg traps and sweeps and things like that. And it all works from, if we do it a little faster, I'm not gonna throw you, but you know, you can start getting into these scenarios, and if you have a mat and you're not actively trying to resist falling, well, no, you should actually try to resist falling, but you know, obviously try to have some kind of like mutual beneficial practice with it. So that's just another area that you can kind of like take your kakie work, start with that framework, and then turn it into a live ippon drill. So if we're doing more live drills, let's take, let me see. Let's just do you push, and I'm gonna sidestep and use age-uke. So push more towards my face. I'm just gonna go sidestep age-uke, come in strike. Basic setup for like an ippon drill. Now, if you go right hand back and step forward and punch, I can just take it here and go. The thing is, beginners and a lot of people that aren't comfortable with seeking contact, they need to get over that little phobia, you know, the initial reaction to someone coming at you is to flinch up, you know, to like tense up, and kakie and push hands help you break that pattern. It helps you get comfortable being close in and force is coming at you, but you're not afraid, you're not jumping away from it, right? You're just staying with it, and you're probably realizing that if I start giving you a bunch of force, you can use it against me in some kind of way. So just pull my hand and take me that way. Yeah, that would have sucked. That would have sucked. So anyways, yeah, I guess that's just kind of wraps up some of the areas that you can take it. You could obviously start working in kicks and legs and things like that. Nothing wrong with that. In fact, I think knees and kicks and things like that from kakie framework that go into ippon drills, really good idea. Okay, so the last little bit that I just want to touch base on, I kind of touched base on it a second ago, but it's the amount of pressure that you should be giving your opponent when you're actually practicing. There's a time and place for adding pressure, and again, that's agreed upon between two partners, but it's not the constant state, it's not the standard, it's not the default. And the reason being is this. Say that I am considerably weaker than Jordan, and all we're doing is pushing really hard, like hard. So say I'm like much weaker than him, I'm not really learning any skill here. And drills and exercises should be about teaching transferable skills that anybody can attain. Now, if we're only doing a competition of battle or competition or battle of strength, then the stronger person's gonna win. That's the lesson. There's no acquirable skill from that, other than I'm weaker, so I just have to practice with people who are weaker than me, so I can always win, kind of thing, or I can always feel like I'm getting something out of the drill. When in reality, the transferable skill from push hands, and this goes back to the whole original like first lesson of push hands and listening hands and sticky hands. The first lesson being, if you don't learn how to get rid of force and tension, you're never going to learn all the skills or that that push hands has to offer. So the actual skills are, even if you are a smaller person, a physically weaker person, you learn how to use softness to overcome strength, because it's certainly not the situation that if you're weaker, you're always just going to lose. Mm-hmm. The smaller person isn't just always going to lose. Plenty of martial arts have taught us that. Plenty of examples throughout history. Jack Dempsey, who I absolutely love, have taught us this throughout history, is if you learn how to use your body in the most efficient ways, you can actually overcome that hardness without just meeting force with force. So the transferable skills, again, they are learning to feel that change in energy, just push it some direction. So he's taking it this direction. So rather than try to force fight it back, which, hey, same mention. but I mean, rather than just try to force fight it back, the efficient use of my energy here is to just give and go. And if you only ever practice pushing hard, like you're a tough guy, you're taking away from your partner's practice time and really from your own. Because nothing is being acquired other than physical conditioning. And that's just not what push hands was really developed for. I know a lot of people want to use it in that way, and that's great, but if that's all you ever do, then you do miss out on learning that tactile sensitivity and awareness. And that's such a useful skill, especially in close range fighting. Goju-ryu, kinsetsu sento, close range fighting system. Those are skills that you need close in, because you're not launching your body around all over the place. You're not getting all crazy with it, You're more staying in a confined space and dealing with things as efficiently as possible. So I hope some of that helps or gives a little bit of thought into what you can actually do with your own Kakie practice. You know, maybe that's not what you practice at your dojo, that's great. But before and after class or with friends in your spare time, if you want to explore some of these things, these are really good avenues to explore. And Kakie, push hands in general, is a great framework for learning all of that. Keep in mind, you know, that this is more of a snapshot in time that isn't the most common occurrence. Most time when people are squared up fighting, if you're staying adjacent arm. So I'm coming out here. I'm not specifically always getting out to the outside and doing stuff from there. So, because that starts looking like some slappy nonsense. So, anyways, there's that. Hope you guys have a good one.